Okay, so very warm welcome, Jackie and Elaine. Nice to have you here for the first time in the Zoom room. So we're just going to dive into the teaching for today. It's the quote, and we'll also have a look at the teaching around that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Bear with me while I get the tech going. Okay. So let's disappear. Let's get that going. Let's put it into slightly bigger. Make it 125. Okay, so share my screen. Can you both see that? Okay.
Yeah,
And read it. Okay, is it big enough? I can make it a bit bigger if you want.
it's fine for me.
Can you see all right, Elaine? I think you're muted.
Sorry, yes, I'm actually on an iPhone, so I can see it a little bit, but
okay, well, we can make it a bit
sorry,
bigger.
I should have put on a bit.
I'll actually read most of it. So
right, yeah, no, that's
worry
fine.
about that.
That's great. Thank
Jack,
you.
if you could kick it off with reading the quote, that would be great. Thanks.
Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened.
Yeah, so it's a quote from Gospel of Matthew, which is quite well quoted. It's one of those oft used quotes, but probably misunderstood a lot of the time. So what he's really telling you to do is ask the Holy Spirit, if you prefer the alternative terms, your inner guide, higher self, or your intuition, that remembers perfect love, for help when you need it. It's not, I want a new car, I want a better job, I want to meet my soulmate. That's a lot of people can misinterpret quote as like, okay, well, just ask and it'll be given to you, like, a very materialistic kind of interpretation. But actually, it's about asking for what you truly want, which is beyond the material. It's asking for guidance. It's asking for peace, love, joy, these things that come from the spirit. And if you ask sincerely, saying it'll be given to you, because your desire is what brings it to you. Your desire for something else other than love was what caused the problem, and your desire for love and truth will restore your mind to its true state. So and he assures you that you will receive the guidance and the help you need when you ask for it. So very reassuring. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door will be opened. Everyone who asks receives. One who seeks finds. To the one who knocks, the door will be opened. So, but it's an inner door. It's not anything external. It's really about going within and saying, okay, show me what I need to know. We talked about this yesterday, Jackie. It's like the true prayer is the true prayer of surrender is, what do I need? What needs to happen? Give me whatever experiences I need in order to awaken. That's the true prayer of the miracle worker. So that's true asking. Okay, whatever I need, to awaken. And that might not be on the level of form, seemingly good or nice, but that's not the point. The point is not to make your life here on the level of form nice. The point is to awaken you from the dream. So it's whatever you need to awaken. If that's your true prayer, sincere prayer, then it will be given to you, and you will be guided on your path of the hero's journey, which I'll talk about a bit now. So if there's advice, even the language he uses sounds familiar, it's because other spiritual teachers that I've quoted recently use very similar language. For example, Joseph Campbell, who discovered and formulated the hero's journey. Actually, Elaine, are you familiar with the hero's journey? Have you heard about it, or is it something new to you?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. So we'll go into more depth about it tomorrow in the masterclass. But a guy called Joseph Campbell, who was a very well-read, was a student of myths, really, cultures and myths, and he, based on all of his studies, he realized there was really one myth. There was what he called it the monomyth, which is the journey of awakening to who we really are. It's the journey of knowing, discovering who you really are, knowing thyself. And he saw that was a universal kind of archetypal journey in every culture, religion, wherever he looked. He saw the same pattern, and he called it the hero's journey. And he was the first person to really identify that pattern, that archetype, and wrote it down in a book. And then subsequent to that, he wrote his book in 1949. You'll notice a significant shift in the way movies in Hollywood were made, because the Hollywood scriptwriters, and they started reading this. They were like, oh, this is really interesting, because this is how to make good stories. And so then a lot of the movies made after 1950 have this hero's journey as the theme. And you see it in all the great epics, the Star Wars movies, The Matrix, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all these, great kind of epic movies. And any movie that really works, it's got the hero's journey built into it. And that's why it works, because human beings resonate with characters who undertaking the hero's journey, because it's the journey that we're on. We're all on it. And, we like to identify with the characters on the screen. Mm-hmm. So yeah, as I said, he studied many different cultures, religions, philosophies, and spiritual traditions. And he talks about the power of following your bliss, he called it. Coined the term following your bliss, term he used to refer to an inspired purpose that activates a flow of positive, helpful energy in the hero's or heroine's life. And there's the quote. So Elaine, can you read that? Is it big enough? Otherwise,
I'll just bring it up. You're going to see it. Is that the bit? Follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss. Yeah.
Yeah. If you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track. Oh, sorry, it's a little bit too small. It's like I'm in an optician.
I'll make it bigger. Does that work?
That's better. Right. Where are we? Put yourself. So
why don't you start from the top?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Follow your bliss. If you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while, waiting for you, and the life you ought to be living is the one you're living. When you can see that, you begin to meet people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open the doors to you. I say, follow your bliss and don't be afraid, and doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. If you follow your bliss, doors will open for you and wouldn't have opened for anyone else.
So quite interesting. Talking about the idea of following your bliss. That doesn't mean it's always going to be, blissful. I think people can misinterpret that quote. It means that there's a sense of a higher purpose. There's something deeper than just pleasure and pain driving you, seeking for pleasure, avoiding pain. It's bliss ultimately is the transcendent state of enlightenment. But we can get glimpses of that in this world when we're doing something that's really inspired, that we feel in the flow with, we're present, we feel very connected to our source, very joyful. That's your bliss, and that connects you, that takes you on a path that ultimately connects you with your source and the transcendent dimension, that in which there is only bliss. That bliss is that natural state of our true being. in this context, it's a little taster of it. When you're actually, doing things in the world, doors opening, stepping through doors, doing things in the world, but being motivated or inspired rather by a higher purpose. It's not just about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. So, any thoughts on that? Questions?
I think that seems clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
I find interesting is the doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anyone else.
Yeah.
I guess that means that's referring to us all having a unique curriculum.
Yeah, you're on your unique path. Yeshua calls it your special function in the course, and that's your path of awakening. So from the delusion of being an individual self, you're going to have a unique way to wake up. There's going to be a unique the kind of track, he says, that has been there all the while waiting for you. Well, that's your destiny path. The course, Yeshua says in the course at some point, the script is written. Script is written, so it's already there, that path. It's waiting for you. It's why you came. And when you start to get on it, then it's suddenly you go, I'm actually feel a sense of purpose now.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing finally. This feels deep and meaningful and connected, and that it's right, because it's going to take you out of the dream. It's going to awaken you from the dream. It's going to awaken you to your true nature. Doing whatever your following your bliss or your higher purpose. So Joseph Campbell saw that, and saw that was a universal archetype, and that the people who did find their bliss and followed it were much happier individuals, much more inspired, much more effective in the world. These are the people who are often called great. They lead so-called great lives because they do extraordinary things that someone who's not following their bliss just can't understand, because they don't have that level of inspiration that's inspiring them to do this stuff. And so how do the so-called great people of history, the Yeshuas, the Buddhas, more recently think of Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. They did significant stuff. They led lives that were dedicated to a cause bigger than themselves, and they made an impact. How did they do it? Well, they didn't do it by just avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. It was much deeper than that. They found a deeper sort of meaning and calling, and they followed that. And often, Nelson Mandela went to prison for 27 years. Well, that's not an easy way to follow your bliss, but that's what he had to do. So it doesn't always mean it's going to be roses by any means. Often the lessons can be quite tough, but you do feel this sense of an inner inspiration. You're not motivated by the external forces anymore. It's all about the inner self and the inner energy, intuition, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, that's inspiring you to think and speak and act in certain ways. And he called this, Carl Jung called this flow of helpful energy synchronicity. So many names for it. Flow, it's another name. A recent psychologist, a guy called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, coined the term flow for it. It's not a new phenomenon. It was actually well described by Lao Tzu in ancient China 2,500 years ago. He wrote the Tao Te Ching, which is all about the Tao being the one, perfect oneness, just beingness that's static, that doesn't change. But then how does this Tao express in the world? And how do you get in tune with the Tao in the world? And that was the essence really of the Tao Te Ching. And they call that in Taoism, they call it Wu Wei. So flow is just another name for it, Wu Wei. So it's kind of funny when people say this is new age. You just lie. It's not new age at all. It's very old age. It's been going for thousands of years. All of the stuff references back to these ancient spiritual traditions. If you understand that it's just the same thing by a different name. So flow is not a new concept, it's just a new term for an existing, quite well-known concept. It brings it into modern psychology, which is useful. So these terms like synchronicity and flow mean that, to psychologists and, sort of academics, it's more acceptable, which is good. Because if you call it a miracle rather than synchronicity, they might go, oh no, we don't do miracles, that's too unscientific or whatever. But we call it synchronicity, then that's acceptable, because Carl Jung was a well-recognized psychotherapist, so he has some credibility. So that's all the new age stuff is often it's just the same stuff that's always been around, just rebranded, different name. Mindfulness, the essence of mindfulness is really that's the same as a Vipassana meditation technique, which is what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. It's the essence of Buddhism is that technique. Well, they just took it and they said, well, we'll call it mindfulness, and we'll take out the the Buddhist overtones, and then it's quite popular. People are like, wow, this stuff really works, because you just take the dogma, the belief system away, and you just focus on the technique, which ironically was what the Buddha said to people 2,500 years ago. He said, don't believe me, don't believe what I'm saying at all, just meditate and discover for yourself. So he was telling people much the same thing. In his own time, he was the revolutionary. He revolutionized Hinduism, which had kind of lost its way. And so now 2,500 years later, we have the same thing. It's like a regeneration of the same thing, just coming in a new format that can be helpful for people to access it. And then there's there's a lovely song by Enya. Did you manage to listen to it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Really, really beautiful song, and it just
lovely music.
It's an example of synchronicity, because I'm busy, starting to think about composing this email, and then suddenly the song comes on. I just listened to a YouTube stream where it goes and it just creates a playlist for you, and off it goes. And as I'm thinking that, along comes the song, and I'm like, oh wow, obviously I've heard it before, but I hadn't really listened to the lyrics. I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing. That'll do. That's just a really great song to go with the theme. So we'll read that in this excerpt from the lyrics of the song. That are really, in truth, modern songwriters are poets, aren't they? They're writing poetry, and then it's just set to music, and they sing it, and so it's much more popular than if they just recited a poem. Enya's, I don't know how many million copies of that song have been sold, but probably millions and millions, because it sounds really, it's just the sound of it is good. But then you look at the lyrics, and they're quite profound. So if you can read that, Jackie, is it big enough? I can make it.
Yeah, we can make it a little bigger, but I can see it. When there's a shadow, you follow the sun. When there is love, then you look for the one. And for the promises, there is the sky. And for the heavens are those who can fly. When there's a journey, you follow a star. When there's an ocean, you sail from afar. And for the broken heart, there is the sky. And for tomorrow are those who can fly. If you really want to, you can hear me say, only if you want to, will you find a way. If you really want to, you can seize the day. Only if you want to, will you fly away. Ah, je voudrais voler comme un oiseau die. Ah, je voudrais voler comme un oiseau die.
Good pronunciation, better than mine.
I didn't really expect that.
Huh?
I didn't see that one coming.
Have you done French? You studied French?
Yeah, I have actually. I would like to fly like a winged bird. I would like to fly like a winged bird. So wing it.
Well, that's my interpretation, because they go Dale. How do you say it? Dale.
Die.
Die. They say die, which is wing. But why would they put that at the end? It's like, okay, we'll wing it, fly.
Yes.
So that's just my interpretation of it. But really powerful spiritual message there.
Yeah.
When there's a shadow, you follow the sun. Okay, so when there's darkness, follow the light, find the light. When there is love, then you look for the one. Okay, because love comes from oneness. In the original lyrics, the one was small, but I put it as big because actually I think that's maybe what they meant. Who knows? And for the promises, there is the sky. And for the heavens are those who can fly. So sky is symbolic of heaven. It's quite a good analogy. So it's about the closest thing that we can get to heaven in this material world, because it's kind of vast, it's infinite, and it's not like you can ever arrive there. You know, you go up into the air, you're not in the sky. It's not like, okay, now I've reached the sky. It's just kind of spacious all around you. And then eventually you go into outer space and the sky disappears. So what is the sky then? So that's, you know, it's quite a good pointer really to what the state of awareness we call heaven is, which then he refers to in the next one. And for the heavens are those who can fly. So those who can fly, you know, talking about spiritually, those who can free themselves from the gravity or the pull of the ego's thought system, and you know, fly away from it, which is what the song's all about. When there's a journey, you follow a star. Okay, so that's guidance. Sort of analogous to the whole Christmas story, the nativity story, you know, the wise men following a star. So when there's a journey, the hero's journey, you follow a star. So there's a guide. There's this guiding light. We call it the Holy Spirit. That's guiding you on your hero's journey. And there's an ocean, you sail from afar. So you go the extra mile. You do whatever it takes. Crossing the ocean, another, you know, it's like, okay, you've got a voyage. It's a voyage of discovery. That's what the hero's journey is. You sail from afar to come home. So you've lost yourself in far off lands, and then you come home, sailing from afar. And for the broken heart, there is the sky. So remember, sky is symbolic of pure formless awareness. We call it heaven. So for the broken heart, there is the sky, which is the answer. You go into that pure formless awareness of perfect love, symbolized by the sky, and that will heal your heart. And for tomorrow, there are those who can fly. So tomorrow belongs to those who can fly. Presently, for tomorrow, those who can fly. So really pointing us to, spiritual flight. You know, it's the poem's clearly a metaphor for the spiritual journey and spiritual awakening. So if you really want to, you can hear me say, only if you want to, will you find a way. So it's really willingness. You know, and Yeshua says this many times in the Course. He says, it's your willingness that's needed. You must want to wake up. You must want salvation more than anything else, because then you'll find a way. But if you want something else, then you won't find a way, because you've actually blocked your own way to finding it. If you really want to, you can seize the day, you know, carpe diem. That implies being in the moment. What does seizing the day mean? It means I'm totally in the moment. I'm immersing myself in the present moment, which is a portal to eternity. It's the closest approximation, present moment of eternity in this world. So bringing us back into the now, saying you'll only fly away when you're rooted in the now moment. Only if you want to will you fly away. So it requires the willingness. The willingness to let go. What's going to help you fly is letting go of all of your baggage, all of the your negative thoughts and emotions that weigh you down, stop you from flying away. If you can drop all that, you know, let it go, then spiritual flight becomes automatic. If you've truly let go, then you're not rooted to time and space anymore. Okay, and then French, I would like to fly like a winged bird. So that's just stating your intent. I would like to fly like a winged bird. So wing it. So take flight. It's like, okay, we'll do it then. So some really good pointers to the hero's journey and spiritual awakening. It's all in the lyrics set to a song that already sounds good. Okay, so any thoughts on that?
Well, I would translate the last ones rather than so wing it, which implies to me not being prepared. I would just say, so go ahead and fly.
Yeah, well, maybe fly. So fly.
Yeah.
I just the dare means wings. So
yeah.
Wing it. Well, wing it. It's almost like, you see, you're not prepared in the egoic sense. I think that's the idea. So the ego is like, well, to go on a journey, you need to have this in place, you need to do this, and you need to do this. And the spirit just says, just trust me. And you don't need preparations. Just take the next step. And it's not seen as a positive, winging it. But really, when you're living your life in tune with the spirit, you are always winging it. You don't know what's going to happen next. You're not trying to make plans beyond today, beyond what's present. Sometimes, practically you have to, okay, well, I'm planning to take a trip, so I might need to book a flight, a week or two in advance, that kind of thing. But your tension is in the moment. And you're just, okay, well, I don't know how it's all going to work out. So I'm just, moment by moment, I'm just winging it. I'm just being guided by, whatever arises in that moment. And that's a good thing, because in that, if you're not planning is a defense against the truth, and you open up to the guidance that's always there, and the spirit can come in and just give you present guidance. Okay, well, do that then. Right now, you don't need to make plans, because I'll give you the guidance when you need it as to what to do, and then the plan just unfolds moment by moment by moment, without any of the anxiety and fear that characterizes the ego, which is all a defense mechanism to defend the separate self and keep it intact. Okay, so that brings us to the session, which is where we are. So quite a short teaching. Any comments or questions about that? Otherwise, or maybe we could do a meditation on the quote and on today's workbook lesson as well. Well, should we do a meditation then?
Yeah.
You good?
Okay, so just making yourself comfortable, sitting with your feet shoulder width apart, your back straight. Cup your hands in your lap, close your eyes, and start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. So breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. And subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Breathing into the lower stomach, blowing it up like a balloon, clenching the sphincter muscle. It's the muscle used to contract the flow of urine or squeeze the last drops out. Lock the energy in. And then you draw the energy up, spine into your heart center. So put one hand on your heart to connect with your heart space. And then draw it all the way up into the crown of your head. Just pausing at the top of the inhale. That's a maximal inhale breath. Breath symbolizes spacious awareness or light. So now just scan your mind. Notice any thoughts, particularly expectations about the future. So you've got goals, expectations, desires, Buddha called it all craving. Something to happen in future to meet your expectations. And then ego tells you, then you'll be happy. But just look at all of this. Observe the thoughts, observe the emotions, observe any related body sensations. And you just breathe into all of that again. Breathing in again. Remind yourself that none of this is true or real. Whatever you're expecting is, by definition, in the future, and the future is not real. It's just a mental conception. It actually denies your present moment awareness. So be willing just to let all of it go now with the help of your breath. Say to yourself, I will receive whatever I request. So it's a done deal. Whatever I truly request. We're not talking about all kinds of false ego desires. So you just blow it all away. Letting go of everything that obscures your true mind, pure formless awareness, perfect love. So just finding a sense of peace and stillness at the bottom of the exhale. Pull the stomach into the spine, expel the last remaining air out. Finding some deep peace and stillness. And just listen to these words. Lesson, commentary, and just observe the breath as you do that. Just listening in this quiet, calm, peaceful state. Let the breath open your mind to that. So you're like so. Just listen to these words. Let words and short commentary on the lesson just drop in to this deep peace and stillness, like water just seeping down through the bedrock into the cave below, seeping down into your subconscious mind, permeating it. And you just absorb these ideas. They just drop into this spacious awareness, emptiness in your mind. When your mind is empty, then it can be filled. So keep watching your breath as you allow these words just to permeate in, and you kind of feel into them. Just connect with your heart space, breathing in and out through your nose, but it feels as though the air is flowing into and out of your nostrils. And then just listen and observe these words on a deeper level. So no one desires pain, says Yeshua. But you can think that pain is pleasure. No one would avoid his happiness. You can think that joy is painful, threatening, and dangerous. Everyone will receive what he requests. But he can be confused indeed about the things he wants and the state he wants to attain. What can he then request he would want when he receives it? He has asked for what will frighten him and bring him suffering and make him suffer. So let us resolve today to ask for what we really want, and only this. So we may spend this day in fearlessness, without confusing pain with joy or fear. Love. So with this invitation, just breathe in this loving awareness. Breathe it into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being. In this loving awareness. So nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. So just sinking inwards again, breathing in and out through your nose, going a bit deeper with each breath into this very depth of your mind, which is your source, connecting with it. And now say to yourself, my Father, Father, my source, this is your day. The day in which I would do nothing by myself. So I choose to do nothing by myself, but instead hear your voice in everything I do. Choose to do nothing by myself, but instead to hear your voice in everything I do. We simply have to ask. So ask only for what you offer me. Accept only the thoughts that you share with me. Just breathe in on all of that. And mentally and emotionally and energetically, you just so you just sink into a state of oneness with your Father or Source. So just sink inwards to this deep peace and stillness. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. Just breathe in and out through your nose. Observe the breath flowing into and out of your nostrils. Just let the breath take you into this very deep, calm, relaxed state in which perhaps you just catch a glimpse. So again, just sinking into the silence. No mental commentary, no noise is required, just silence, which is the same as pure formless awareness. If any thoughts come in, seemingly disturb this deep peace, just observe them and remind yourself of the key idea. Breathe in. Imagine breathing light into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind. Bring in the light and say, I will receive whatever I request, or if you prefer alternative version of this, I receive whatever I ask for. So I receive it right now. I ask for peace. And I've received it as I've let go of my separate self. Just exhale, blow everything away. So you're completely empty. You're an empty vessel. Emptied your cup. And then rest here in this deep peace and stillness. Nothing to do, nowhere else to go, nothing to think about. You just sink back into the peace. Nothing else to do, nowhere else to go. Just immerse yourself in it. Just be in it. Don't need to change it. Just enjoy it, experience it. And so just gently coming back now to an awareness of the body and the breath and the senses in the world. And on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in. Nice deep full inhale. Notice the subtle sensations of the breath flowing into the nostrils, the stomach rising, the chest rising. Pause at the top of the inhale. Again, use the opportunity to scan your mind, do a bit more mind training. Maybe it's fairly empty of thoughts. And there's a lot of thoughts. So just be aware of it and remind yourself that I receive whatever I ask for. I will receive whatever I request. So right now, you choose only love and peace and joy. So it is said, so it is done. So you exhale on that choice. Exhale. Blow it all away with the breeze of your breath. So notice how the air flows out, the chest and the stomach suck back in. Energy raised up, subsides back down the point channel to your lower stomach and your groin. So down there on the count of 2, notice the weight of your body pressing down into the chair and your feet touching the ground. So blow it all away. There's the air flowing out, chest and stomach back, suck back in. Feel the energy and the weight of your body pressing down into the chair. Feet touching the ground. Notice what you're feeling with your hands, the rest of your body. So now you're going to breathe in. Okay, notice any smells, you do that. Air has a smell. Notice any taste in your mouth. Notice what you're hearing in the surrounding environment. So being aware again of what you're hearing and all of your senses, but don't interpret any of it. You don't name it, judge it, label it, interpret it, then it really has no power. And just be present. Your sense perceptions carry on, but so whatever you perceive is given its meaning by your mind and interprets it, which is why Yeshua starts their workbook with nothing I see means anything. Helps you to undo the ego mind completely, that one single statement. So now on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So just take a minute to look around the room. So notice the various objects in the room. In this very clear, calm, peaceful state. So try not to name anything. Don't use its name. Judge it in any way. You notice that there's just one awareness behind it all. Doesn't matter what object you're looking at. So just move your eyes around different objects. Randomly, don't select anything or avoid anything. Notice that it's the same awareness that's perceiving it. This thoughtless awareness, pure formless awareness. So this little mind training exercise can teach you that that awareness is always there. It's always in your mind. It's always accessible to you. You don't need to go anywhere to experience it. So peace of God is always within you. It's simply about letting go of the blocks to the awareness of that peace. So just stay anchored in this very deep, peaceful state. Set the intention to stay here, and to help you do that, you can practice the longer meditation. More time tonight, listen to the recording I sent you, or if you don't have time for that, just use the short 6-minute breath break recording. It'll top you up and keep you in the state of mind of receiving whatever you ask for. In truth, receiving the truth, receiving love, peace and joy, which is all we really want. None of the material manifestations of things really matter at all. So that brings us to the end of the meditation. And if you like the session, that was just about an hour, so we can carry on if you like for a little bit, or we can end it here. I'm ending the meditation anyway, so we'll stop that recording. So yeah, how are you doing on time, Jackie? Do you need to go? Or?
I can carry on for a bit longer, actually.
Okay.
Sorry, I will have to go. I've got 3 dogs and I've got a husband keep coming in and out. That meditation was absolutely blissful. Thank you very much.
Well, follow your bliss.
Yeah, that was really, thank you very much.
So
okay.
if you like, because I do record these, I'll send you the recording.
Lovely.
Put it on Telegram, so I'll just forward it to you individually. Okay, so you've got that, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 7.
7, yeah, that's
7
great.
PM,
Look,
yeah, same login. Just join as you did.
Probably a different time for you, isn't it, Elaine? Elaine's in the
that's a good time for me. I'll get a bigger screen as well. Yeah. And no dogs. And no husband. Yeah.
Well, if you can have a couple of hours undistracted, it'll be
yes, it'd be better. Yes. Yeah. Lovely.
Okay, lovely to meet you. See you tomorrow.
Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Bye,
right.
Jackie. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
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 Okay, so let's just have a look at the lesson, shall we?
Do you want to carry on, Jono, or would you rather?
Yeah. I'm always
happy to do it.
Always up for it. The lesson is kind of almost a standard. We should really do the lesson, and then if you want to carry on after that, we can, or end it there. So I will receive whatever I request, or alternatively, I receive whatever I ask for. I just think the alternative is just a bit more direct. It's not I will receive, I do receive. I receive it, whatever I ask for. Because the truth is, you're not asking for material stuff. You ask for peace, you ask for love, you ask for guidance. Well, I receive it right now. There doesn't need to be a time delay. I receive it in the moment of asking for it. And request and ask for the same thing, just a little bit less formal. I ask for. So hence the translation just makes it maybe a bit easier to roll off the tongue. Okay, so you want to read, just do it line by line again. Read the original and then read the alternative sentence below that.
Okay. No one desires pain. That's the same. But he can think that pain is pleasure. That's the same. No one would avoid his happiness. No one would choose to avoid his happiness.
No, I mean, if you said to someone, you're actually going to choose not to be happy, they'd say, well, of course not. That would be insane. But we do, and it explains how we do, how the ego works.
But he can think that joy is painful, threatening, and dangerous. It's the same, but he can think that joy is painful, threatening, and dangerous. Everyone will receive what he requests. It's the same. but he can be confused indeed about the things he wants, the state he would attain.
State he wants to attain.
The state he wants to
So
attain.
wood, he uses wood a lot. It's a bit old-fashioned. It's just what you want.
Yeah.
To attain.
Yeah. What
So
can he
he's saying
then-
we get confused. We get confused between pain and joy. And we somehow think that joy is painful and pain is pleasure.
Well, presumably because the we that's doing the thinking is the egoic mind.
Yeah, which is totally, backwards and upside down. So of course it's going to misperceive.
Yeah, and the
It's going to
subconscious.
tell you.
So, I mean, actually, there's the egoic mind, but then there's also the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, which I guess are they still part of the egoic mind? How does that fit together?
Wow, okay, that's a massive topic.
Okay, yeah. Maybe on for another day.
How does that fit together? No, I mean, we'll go there, but only kind of what philosophers have been wondering about for a few thousand years.
Well, I mean, because of
I was listening to Eckhart Tolle. Someone said, well, what about prayer? He said, well, that's a big topic. Like, what about prayer?
Yeah.
What is a subconscious mind?
Well, I know what it is because I work with a subconscious mind. I know what the conscious mind is, but what I don't quite grasp is whether they are both part of the egoic mind. I suppose they are both the creators of the dream.
If those, it's all about what those parts of the mind are believing. If they believe in separation in any way, shape, or form, so those parts of the mind are really about protecting the separate self, trying to find a way to make the individual human life better, then it's all egoic. Most people's minds are populated by the ego. So the subconscious is populated by their hidden beliefs, all of their past stuff that's buried there, and that's all about protecting and defending and perpetuating the separate self. So what I'm going to show you, maybe this will help you to understand it. If you have a look at this diagram, this is the descent into hell one, which we look at often, but you see at the top level here is consciousness. And Yeshua defines consciousness. He says consciousness is correctly identified as being the domain of the ego, because it's the idea of separation.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an idea. We talk about your mind, you're part of your mind. Really, we're just talking about ideas. What does the mind believe? So the so-called consciousness, the ego consciousness, believes in separation, and it doesn't question that. It says you are a separate self. You have an individual self. And it's got many ways of spinning that story. It could call it a soul. It's a more spiritual version of the illusion. Oh, well, you have an individual soul, but then there's also a collective soul. You've heard all these things, all these ideas. But any idea of separation at all is egoic, right? Because the ego is the belief in separation. So if your subconscious mind is populated with ideas that are based on separation, so it's an idea that you've been hurt in the past, you traumatized, idea you're a victim, an idea that you can be, punished, sacrifice, loss, guilt, fear, sin. These are all ideas that are egoic because they're based on separation. In pure formless awareness of perfect love, they don't exist. So really what you're doing is you're actually cleaning out your subconscious mind and all the so-called aspects of your mind that psychologists like to study are all part of the egoic framework of separation, because you only have levels of mind in the ego. There are no levels in spirit. In perfect oneness, there are no levels. So this diagram, Instrument for Peace, shows levels of mind, but remember, this is within the ego construct. He's meeting us. Yes, you're saying this isn't actually how it is, but this is how it seems to in your illusory world. You seem to have these levels going on in your mind.
Yeah.
Perception, emotion, thought, belief, and then at the very core, the core level is the desire of the ego, or the prayer of the heart. Ultimately, none of those levels exist. So, our job is to let our belief in them go, and come to the single awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love. Merge our mind with that and realize that there are no levels there. There's no perception, there's no emotion, there's no thought in the sense that we think of these, that we know these. Because there's nothing to perceive. There's nothing outside of you. There's nothing to feel good about, bad about, upset about, angry about. There's no subject-object duality to think about. When we think of thought, I think, therefore I am, said Descartes. But actually, it's a delusion. It's not true. You think, and what you think, your dualistic thought, actually denies your true reality, denies your being. It's I am, and the I am doesn't need to think. Thinking is a delusion. I am just knows that it exists, that it is what it is. And what is there to think about in what we think of as thought in those terms? There isn't really anything. I just, I am that I am. Hence the original name of God in the Bible given to Moses was I am that I am. There's nothing to think about. There's no I am this, I am that. I'm in a relationship with someone else. None of that, because it doesn't exist in perfect oneness. So this deconstructs those levels of mind. It deconstructs the definitions we have: subconscious mind, superconscious mind, any other parts of the mind. They don't really exist. You go into the single state of mind, of awareness, called pure formless awareness. We call it pure formless awareness, which is heaven, and that's all there is. The mind is completely clear, empty, open, and blank. It's like a blank mind. So the ego is terrified of that, because it says, well, you're going to become a vegetable, and you're going to cease to exist, because your mind's just going to go blank, and then all of your thoughts are going to disappear, and you're going to become stupid, and how you're going to function, and it'll have all kinds of arguments. But in that emptiness, in that blankness, there's no need for thought, because it's a perfect state. You're just perfectly happy, perfectly content in that state. So you don't need to now think about anything outside of that. You're just aware of that awareness. You're aware, but not thinking. You see, so that's why we're using the word awareness, to point to that state beyond thought, where you just are. So this ultimately deconstructs all of the models of the mind. You want to believe in this model: perception, emotion, thought, belief. It's a good model, works, but it's still a model. It's a construct within the ego's domain, and it's necessary. He gives us these things because it's necessary to help us to awaken from it. It's not absolutely true. And he says, forgiveness is an illusion, but it's the only illusion that doesn't breed other illusions, because it's the denial of all illusions. To deny an illusion that doesn't even exist is illusion. You see, that's why it's an illusion. But by that denial, you end the illusions. You don't perpetuate them. You don't make them more. So forgiveness is the only illusion that brings an end to all illusions. So does that kind of answer your question? Again, a huge topic, but the aspects of mind are not real. What you think of as subconscious and all these delineations. I remember having the same question years ago. I was reading like Power of Your Subconscious Mind, a guy called Joseph Murphy wrote, and I was like, fascinated. Okay, so subconscious is powerful and you can program it. And I was like, so where does God fit into all this? I didn't really get it, because it's not explained. It's like psychology and God didn't meet until A Course in Miracles came on. And then suddenly he's given us this master teaching, and he's gone, okay, well, this is how it fits into an advanced psychological model. Much more advanced than they'll teach you at a university. and any of the therapists, even Jung started to get there, but even him, I don't think he understood, the perfect oneness, because how can you when you're human, unless you're perfectly enlightened? You still, you're getting glimpses of it. You start penetrating the veil, and getting these glimpses beyond the veil of illusion, to use that term again. But
yeah,
the full experience of that awareness is quite unusual. That's a mystic experience, which I would guess people like Freud and Jung, they probably never experienced that in their life. Maslow pointed to it. He was interesting, Maslow, because whether he'd experienced it or not, but he studied these spiritual traditions, and he understood that there were these transcendent experiences. So in his model, at the very top is transcendence. In his 8-tier model is Maslow's pyramid. Let's have a look. So there's we want the advanced one. There we go. Transcendence. So this is his advanced theory. First one was 5 levels, and then he realized that was incomplete. So he put in the transcendence level at the very top of the pyramid, because it transcends the personal. He understood that at a point you actually deconstruct the personal self, and the person ceases to exist in that transcendent level. So self-actualization wasn't actually the top of the tree. Transcending the self was the top. You can't actualize a self that doesn't actually exist. But it's a step in the right direction. All of these are steps up the ladder from your base physiological needs, safety, belonging, and love. These are all ego needs. They're deficiency needs. They're based on a sense of lack and scarcity, and you're trying to compensate for the sense of lack and scarcity. Esteem as well would also be, I feel like I don't really have self-esteem, so I need to be, I need to be acknowledged, I need to be valued, I want respect, this kind of thing. It's an esteem need based on a sense that I'm lacking esteem. Often so an attempt to counter our lack of self-esteem. Then we have cognitive, so you start thinking more, intellectualization. You can start to understand things like A Course in Miracles, maybe reason in the David Hawkins model. That would be sort of the level of reason. And then beyond that, you start going into aesthetics. So that's more about beauty, and just beauty for beauty's sake, and just appreciating. There'd be a gratitude there. Self-actualization is the self now becoming, what it can really be, its full potential, which is the precursor to this transcendent level. So if someone is really on this path, trying to self-actualize and really be better, become a better separate self, it's ultimately not the answer, but it could lead them to the answer. If I look at my my journey, story of Jono, parable of Jono, as David Hoffmeister's parable of David. It's just a story, but it can be useful because you can learn from it. I've learned from it, and maybe other people can. I was really on a path of self-actualization. It's like, okay, I want to know more. I want to learn. It was all about learning more, becoming cleverer, understanding the mind. I really was fascinated by the mind. But it was all about making Jono a better separate self. If I'm honest, that was what it was about. And I was going to become, the best squash player in the world, and then I'd be a great motivational speaker. And there's this aspiration to be better, but all within the framework of the separate self, which I found it's not a very peaceful, restful place to be, because you never feel like you're enough. Jono is never enough. Jono is trying to be something more than he is, and there's always that striving for more. And when I get there, you don't make that conscious, but for many years I realized I was living out of the now. So when I get there, it's just gonna be amazing. When I get to my goal, I want to be the world champion, then I'll get the respect. I will get the respect that I deserve. People will say, yes, Jono is really good. He's made it. And that was meeting all of these lower needs, like self-esteem, and that would make my life worthwhile. So it wasn't ultimately the answer, but what it did lead me to was something beyond the personal self. Eventually, I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, that's all failed. My self-actualization attempt on the level of form, it didn't work. I didn't achieve the goal. And so then I had to review my whole thought system and go, okay, well, maybe it's wrong. Maybe this idea that what the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve, Napoleon Hill, and all of these sort of personal growth authors, maybe it's actually incorrect. Maybe it's false, because it didn't work for me. And I really did give it my full go. So why didn't it work then? Maybe that's, I had to consider that maybe I didn't understand it all, which was very helpful. I'm very glad that happened, because it made me question the entire egoic model. And then I started to transcend that, in my sort of late 20s, early 30s. I had an experience of just going outside of that separate self and going, well, actually, it's okay. I've let this go. I don't need to be that person. I don't need to be a world champion. I can just kind of carry on. I'll still play because I quite enjoy it. But there's no kind of egoic motivation anymore. I'm not doing it because I want to achieve a goal sometime in the future. I'm just doing it because I quite enjoy the activity, and I enjoy playing the game, and some of the social aspects, I suppose. But I enjoy playing the game. I like the being in the flow. And so all of this, all of my experiences trying to meet my ego needs eventually took me out of the ego into the state of transcendence, because that's where you end up if you keep going. All the models agree. It ends up in a transpersonal self, where you can call that a higher self, or you could call it no self. In the Buddhist model, it's no self. But there's a state of mind that's beyond the separate self.
So can I just ask you, when you had your oneness experience in the Vipassana retreat, was that something beyond transcendence? Because you say that was temporary, but that was, I guess what the course would call a state of revelation. But you're now saying that you are operating in a place of transcendence, but there's something more because you've had that.
Yeah, well, that was a transcendent experience, no doubt. There was no, in that moment, there was no self. There was no sense of a separate self. Jono disappeared entirely. There was no self-reference. What does Jono have to do? What? None of that. No time, no space, no self. Just, this is where the name came from. Just pure formless awareness. I couldn't give it any other name. Just a pure formless awareness. Which
when you
was
talk about the transcendence now, you're talking about an understanding and a choice to live in that place, but there are these higher transcendent experiences that you also had.
Yeah. So, transcendence as an experience, he called it a peak experience, Maslow. You can have these transcendent peak experiences, and he only changed the name because the psychological world wasn't ready for mystic experience. But he insisted that a peak experience was a mystic experience. It was something that was transcendent by its nature. And you can have that, anyway. I had a peak experience or a mystic experience on the squash court, where I just transcended the separate self, and I wasn't really playing. I was being played. It just happened through me.
Oh, wow.
The separate self just dropped away for that particular match I played, and I didn't do it. I didn't play. There was no separate self playing. It just happened. And there was an awareness that I was like observing it, but the self had really dropped away. And then, when that happens, the energy that it releases is extraordinary, because all of that egoic, very limited fear-based mindset, which really keeps you very limited in thought and in action. It's not a good state of mind to be in to perform at any high level. It just dropped away, and it just like, well, there was no limits then. I could just do whatever. And that particular match, I did just do whatever. It was like the guy had no chance. I'd lost to him previously quite badly, like 3-love. And that day, I mean, he just couldn't touch me. I think he got 4 points or something. He said, if you play like that, you'll threaten some of the top players. And on that night, I probably would have, because it's just like I'm in a zone state that's very difficult for anyone to match unless you're in that state as well. So
Wow.
you can have a transcendent experience anywhere. You don't have to have it in meditation.
So that was some years ago. That was when you were playing full time.
Yeah, it was in the early days of my professional career. So I decided to give up university. I'd done a degree, and I was due to go on and become an accountant and auditor, and I just couldn't stay. I was like, I can't do that. It just feels like prison. So I'd made the decision, much to my parents' horror, that okay, that I'm going to go and I'm going to do this. So I kind of felt like, okay, I had to justify this, this decision. And the only way I could justify it was by succeeding, was by actually, being good and winning. And so I put all this pressure on myself. It was in the first year of my professional career. And as a result, I wasn't playing very well because, all this self-imposed pressure creates fear, and that blocks your flow and your creativity. And I really wasn't playing well at all. I was really frustrated. I'm like, I'm supposed to be a pro and I'm supposed to be beating these people. And the guy I was playing wasn't, he was quite a good player, but he certainly wasn't a pro. He was well past his best. He was in his late 30s and I was early 20s. And I was like, I should be killing the guy, but I wasn't. It doesn't work that way. I lost. So it was the level of fear that I had. There was so much fear around the outcome and all of that attachment. I remember the whole day I was like stressing about the match because it was he was at my club, so it was like a local club derby, and everyone was going to be there. It was the 2 first league sides playing, and everyone would be there, and so it was all on display. And my ego was like, I've got to win, I've got to win to show people that I'm okay, that I am a proper pro and I can do this. And very very much attached to the outcome and what other people think, and that creates a state of inner conflict and stress, which I could feel. I wasn't happy at all that day. But I went for a walk in the late afternoon. Yeah. And I managed to just get into a state of mind where I wasn't thinking. It's something in me. It was so interesting because I don't know why. I don't know how that happened. It was an act of grace or something. But something in me said, just don't think. Just don't think at all. Because my mind was like, oh no, but you got to plan your strategy and you've got to have a strategy. And when it started doing that, that was the ego chattering away. Something in me said, just do not think. Just blank your mind. And I went on to that court in a state of transcendence. I was not thinking anymore. The mind had kind of shut down and it just happened. So that conscious mind, the ego is trying to plan and control and manage the whole situation. I managed with great effort. I have to say it wasn't easy, but I managed to shut it up.
Yeah.
And then that's what opened. And because I'd been in so much kind of fear, the release was huge. I was like, wow, this is just an amazing experience. It was actually, it was a mystic experience or a peak experience, what Abraham Maslow would call a peak experience on the squash court, which was spiritually liberating. I'll never forget that night. It was amazing. I just remember feeling so happy and joyful, like I'd been freed from a prison.
Yeah.
I went back and I was so excited, just tell my sister and say, that was just so amazing. I've never played squash like that before. It was like anything's possible. If I could play like that, anything's possible. But it was a transcendent experience. It was, it was beyond self-actualization because there was no separate self. It was playing. I wasn't identified with the character of Jono anymore. And that had kind of dropped away. Okay, so Jono came back to an extent, but not to the same extent. That self had weakened its hold, and I could sort of step into that field of awareness when I went onto the squash court and just play. And it kind of lasted for the rest of my career. Not to the same extent. I never had quite the same high, but there was always an element of this kind of flow state in my playing after that. I never, maybe I had a couple of, every now and then you just go totally out of flow on the squash court. It's not pretty. So I might have had a couple of those, but generally I was pretty much, in a flow state, and the fear dropped away. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so scared of losing now. It's just like, okay, it's okay. I can just play the game. I'd like broken through, and I realized it's not about the outcome. It's just being in the moment and just letting go, and it happens. It happens. You don't know how it happens, but it happens when you're in that state, and you just know what to do without any planning. So I suppose that was my first sort of mystic experience, and it really got me interested in this whole domain of peak experiences, peak performance, and then Maslow, and it started a train of exploration, inquiry, which has led me here. 25 years later, I'm teaching this stuff. Maybe it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had that experience. Who knows? So often these experiences, they're there to show you something that you can now. It's not just intellectual, theoretical. It's like you experienced it, and then without a shadow of a doubt that there is the state of a transcendent self. There is a state of mind where the separate self just drops away, and that is a pointer, then a little glimpse of the ultimate transcendent state, which we call heaven, which is beyond the separate self entirely, beyond time and space. There is no human self anymore, and you're back home.
Yeah.
So all of these models, whichever way you look at it, you could use Maslow's hierarchy. You could look at David Hawkins's map of consciousness. You could look at spiral dynamics, integral theory. There's many developmental models, but they all really come down. They all say the same thing. They have different ways of slicing and dicing the ego, which is the illusion. They'll have different categorizations, but in the end, they point beyond the illusion. They all end up in what's called the transpersonal, a sense of a transpersonal self, which is exactly what all the spiritual masters have told us. Yeshua called it the kingdom of heaven. The Buddha called it no self, nirvana. There's another reality, another dimension beyond the separate self, beyond time and space, that you can access with the correct training. If you train, you can train this, and sometimes it just kind of happens. It can just spontaneously happen. That's been known. Like people just have a mystic experience and they really don't know why they had a mystic experience. Eckhart Tolle just like suddenly woke up. Why did he have that? Maybe just because the pain was too great. Who knows? But he had a mystic experience, an opening into the transcendent self that profoundly changed his life. He went on a whole different track after that. So one experience like that is life-changing. It can absolutely change your entire life, because you've got a different perspective now, and you've gone beyond the limited separate self. So you know that there's something more than it, more than that. And then usually, if you're curious, you go, well, what was that? I want to know. And then can start a whole journey of exploration. Eckhart Tolle had no idea what had happened to him, because he wasn't spiritually awake in any sense. But he then got curious. He went, okay, so what is this all about? And then he started reading and started put his, quite highly developed intellect to work on this. Okay, well, what is it? What's actually happened to me? And let me try and understand this. And then he realized, okay, well, this isn't a new experience. I've just had an enlightenment experience. This has been described in, many of the spiritual teachings, the Eastern teachings, the state of mind. And and so that there began his journey of becoming a spiritual teacher and following his bliss. But one night, one moment, can completely change that person's life. I'll give you another example. Martin Luther, the guy behind the Reformation. So really, if you look at Martin Luther, he played a pivotal role in the revolution that was the Reformation, and then that became the Renaissance. of Europe, which is really the birth of this sort of modern era. The Industrial Revolution came out of the Renaissance. So pretty important, role. Would we be where we are without his contribution? It might have happened anyway, but he was like the catalyst. So in one night, he got an insight that led him to do what he did. He was, beginning in the Catholic tradition, he had all this guilt and this sin and this fear, and he couldn't get over the belief that he was guilty, because that's the ingrained kind of Catholic mantra: you're guilty, you're a guilty sinner. And but he was determined. So I think he stayed awake the whole night, and he was reading. There's a passage from the Bible where it says it's in Paul, I think, in the New Testament, by works Bible verse. So let's have a look. For by grace you have been saved. That's the one. For by grace you have been saved, and not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So he couldn't kind of get his head around that passage, and I think he just sat with it the whole night, and eventually kind of broke through in the early hours of the morning. And he realized that it's not by any works. We can't do anything to save ourselves. It's only by God's grace. Or he couldn't quite connect with God, so he by the grace of Jesus Christ, was sort of the intermediary. But by grace we're saved, not by works. And that was his key insight. And he dropped away a lot of that sin and guilt. And that was what caused the Reformation, because the Reformation was really about challenging that old egoic belief system that was very much rooted in sin and guilt that the Catholic Church had imposed on everyone, saying this isn't true. And he had that, because he'd had that experience, he then dedicated the rest of his life to teaching that. And that was what created the Reformation, which led to the whole Protestant breakaway. And they said, actually, there's another way. The Catholic Church have got it wrong. And because of all that freedom of thought, that prepared the way for, okay, actually, once the lid is off, all kinds of things can happen. So the whole Renaissance unfolded. And that was the precursor to the modern era, the Industrial Revolution, and now the information age, so it just shows you, one mystic experience, what it can do, and profoundly change the world if you then act on it. So then he found his bliss. That night he found his bliss. He said, I will dedicate my life to teaching other people that they are not bound by sin and guilt. And that was really what the Reformation was about, actually. There's the 95 precept, but effectively he was challenging the ego's thought system of sin and guilt and saying, no, there is another way. By grace we are saved. And that is a true insight. It is by grace that we are saved. There's nothing you can do to save yourself. You can try and, out of a sense of lack and guilt, try and fix it with works. And you're never going to get anywhere, because you're just perpetuating the problem. I'm guilty, I'm a sinner, and now I've got to do all this stuff to try and expiate my sin. But every time I do it, I'm confirming that I'm guilty. So you realize that the whole confession ritual and all of that the Catholic Church had invented was useless. It didn't work. It wasn't actually going to free people. It was only this understanding of that verse, by grace we are saved, that would save people. And so he began to teach an alternative version of the gospel, which freed people. And it really did. It was obviously the right time, because all of that church oppression, there were a lot of people like, this doesn't really work for us. It feels like slavery. It doesn't feel like freedom. And then he comes along and it says, actually, there's another way. And at the same time, there's a printing press that had been invented. So he became, the world's first best-selling author, because the printers just got hold of his books and just printed them. And apparently about a quarter of the books in Europe were his at that stage. So it all got spread out. And he just followed his bliss. He did what he was called to do. And that mystic transcendent experience was then the reference point for the rest of his life, to follow his bliss. So one moment like that, one night, can absolutely transform a person's life. And in his case, he transformed the world because he just happened to be the right guy in the right place at the right time. And all the kind of circumstances lined up that he would be the one to bring this insight into popular consciousness via, his writings, and then the printing press spread it out. And, he was probably the world's first celebrity. He was really well known. Everyone was like, Martin Luther, he was a superstar. And that's actually what protected him. The reason why he didn't get put to death was because he had that popularity, and so people knew him, and he had a mentor protected him, and so on. So I mean, I digress a bit, but it's just to show you the power of it. If you look at every great revolution in history, it usually came down to a mystic experience. Someone had a mystic experience. Jesus went into the desert for 40 days, mystic experience. The Buddha had a mystic experience under the Bo tree, which then led to Buddhism. Moses, burning bush, has a mystic experience. He's got to go and free his people, and then the whole saga of the Exodus unfolds from one transcendent experience. So the power that is available through those experiences, it cannot be underestimated, because it's tapping into the power of the infinite, and that's how the infinite, eternal power of God comes into the world through that person. It says, okay, I will use you to do what I'm going to do. And it's not that they're saved. See, they're not trying to save themselves by their works. They realize that I'm already there, like I've got there, and now I'm just being inspired by it. I'm the avatar who's just doing what I'm told to do. I'm just following directions. And coming from that higher place, then those directions are inspired, and amazing things can happen, miraculous things can happen. So that's what it means to follow your bliss. To come back to the idea of the hero's journey and following your bliss. Let go of the separate self, go into that transcendent state, and allow that to guide you. Easier said than done, but that's the mind training that we're doing. Go beyond the separate self, because that's where the power is. And that's where the miracles lie. That's where the joy is. That's where your life really blooms. And your life, although it's still a dream, your life becomes meaningful in the dream, because it's the awakening from the dream, and it's helping others to awaken. And you feel like, okay, well, I actually do have a genuine purpose here. It's the only real purpose, and I've aligned my life with that. And so now I have a divine purpose, and I feel like I'm living my life on purpose, and that will inspire you to do great things. You have a level of inspiration rather than motivation. Motivation is short-lived. Motivation's like, I want some outcome on the level of form, and that's going to motivate me. I want that result, so I'll work hard to lose my 10 kilograms after Christmas, or to study and get a better qualification so I can get these kinds of things. And that's quite short-lived. It can work for a while, and you can then get there, but inevitably it comes with a sense of disappointment. So, oh, well, it actually isn't, because nothing that you do on the level of form is actually going to save you, as it says, but it's not by works we saved. It's only that, that transcendent level of mind that's going to save you. So it doesn't really work. So rather, it's about just connecting with our source and finding grace, and then being inspired by that. So, okay, well, I'm inspired to do this. It's not, I'm motivated to get an outcome on the level of form. There's just something in me that calls me to do it, not for a reward, just because it feels right. And that's the level of inspiration, and that's enormously powerful, and that's sustainable. It can continue no matter what happens on the level of form, because it's not reliant on the level of form. It's like you'll carry on irrespective of the difficulties or obstacles, so that's then how you have resilience. You're not attached to the outcome on the level of form. So whatever happens, you just I know this is correct. I will keep going because that's what my inner voice says I should do. And so inspiration will beat motivation every time. It's got much more power. It's got the power of the infinite and the eternal behind it. And so it will be much longer lasting, sustainable. People talk about sustainability and the illusion. Well, the only thing that is sustainable is that mindset is that power coming from the eternal infinite self, which gets expressed through inspiration. Okay, so where are we? Back to here.
How long is it, Jono? Because that was a brilliant explanation, but it's actually I'm just running slightly tight on time now.
10 to 6. Well, this is only 2 paragraphs, so maybe we can finish it.
Okay.
We're halfway through the first one, I think.
Okay. Where did we get to?
Everyone will receive what he requests.
What can he then request that he really wants when he receives it? That's the alternative, isn't it? Should I just do the alternative?
Yeah. Okay.
He has asked for what will frighten him and make him suffer. Hang on, what can you? Let us resolve today to ask for what we really want, and only this, so that we may be fearless today and not confuse pain with joy or fear with love. So, as I understand that, that's really, you could say that's talking about how we have a tendency to focus on what we don't want, a tendency to be fearful and focusing on lack, which is a way, it's like praying for the negative, isn't it?
Well, the ego is cunning. It'll give us egoic desires, and it'll say, well, this is good. You could be a better separate self. So it gives us a goal and says, go pursue that, whatever that may be. Find a better job, make more money, lose your weight. Get a six-pack, find your soulmate, etc., on and on it goes, and it gives you all of these apparently desirable scenarios, but actually that's frightening us. So we've asked for what will frighten us, because all of those have the downside of, well, what if I don't achieve it? So there's an expectation, well, that'll be good. Oh, but then immediately the mind goes, but what if I don't achieve it? Then I'll be disappointed.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is we're really asking for what will frighten us and make us suffer.
Yeah.
Right? An old same insight as the Buddha. He said that desire or craving will make us suffer. It's the essence of suffering.
Yeah.
Same message. Second noble truth of Buddhism. So
Right.
you see it. These universal truths come through in all the different teachings. So let us resolve today not to ask for what we really want, and only this. So what do we really want? We really want to be peaceful, happy, joyful, loving. That's what we really want.
Yeah.
We don't really want what we think. See, the ego set us up and said, if you achieve this goal externally, then you will be happy.
Yeah.
And we don't really question that assumption.
Yeah.
But you need to, because they're like, is that actually the case?
Mm-hmm.
Does that actually work? And if you really do inquiry on it, you'll see it doesn't work. That's false.
Yeah.
Therefore, the entire, personal growth, goal setting, it all falls apart, because you're like, well, why are you doing it? Because you think you're going to be happy in the future. But if that's not the case, in fact, you're going to just suffer more and more, as the Buddha's insight and Yeshua tells us, then why are you bothering? Because it's actually just creating more suffering.
Mm.
So the whole thing then just deconstructs, and then you have to go back to the drawing board and go, okay, well, maybe that's not going to work. As I did, I had to do this at, in my late 20s, because I was like, okay, that hasn't worked. So maybe there's something else. Maybe I'm missing something. And that's, when the journey of exploration, the spiritual journey really starts. The hero's journey really starts there.
Mm. Yeah.
So just another lesson.
Well, at least it was only late 20s, Jono. That's pretty good compared with most people.
Yeah, well, I know I was, but you see, that was the result of the decision to self-actualize, because I was like, okay, I'm going for this. I want to be the best I can be as the separate self. So, that would be, in my eyes, that would be the world champion and, great motivational speaker, and. So I was trying to self-actualize the separate self, but in the process, I discovered that I wasn't that self.
Yeah.
And that's inevitably what happens. I'm not the only one who's been on a journey like that. So if you're pushing into that domain of self-actualization, sooner or later, you get to the transcendent level and you realize actually that, there is no self. I'm not really that person. But it requires, it's a pyramid. So if you don't self-actualize, how are you going to get to the transcendent self? You're going to be stuck in those lower levels. So there's always any self-improvement. Personal growth isn't the ultimate answer, but I don't knock it because it's a part of the journey. It was a huge part for me to prepare me for then, what came in my 30s and 40s was, okay, now you're going to go into the spiritual stuff and you start understanding that. But without 20 years of a foundation of personal growth, because I started doing it when I was 12, I probably wouldn't have been ready. You see, so it was all necessary. It was useful. You just don't. Often what happens is people get stuck there, and they don't move on. It's like, actually, you need to move on. There's something else, and listen to the call to move you on. Don't keep going to the same. When I went to Tony Robbins seminar, and some people have been going like 10 times. Every time he came to London, they went. So, okay, move on. Like, you've done it once or twice. Find something else. It's like find another experience that you're clearly still seeking something because you're going back. But maybe you got to look beyond, whatever that paradigm is, and look beyond it. But a lot of people struggle with that. So you got to let go of what's worked. That's the challenging thing in this journey. It might have worked to a point, and then there comes a point where you go, okay, it doesn't work for me anymore. I have to have the courage to let it go and trust that there's going to be something else, because I can't carry all of that with me on the journey. And I suppose I've always been able to do that. It's like, okay, it just doesn't feel right anymore. So, drop that, let it go. I did all kinds of personal growth stuff, and I had affirmation cards and vision. I did all of that. And then at the point I was like, okay, it just doesn't feel right anymore. So I'm not going to do it. If I'd gone, no, I have to keep doing this, then there's no room for the new to enter. Okay, so last paragraph. I'm going to read that.
My source, this is your day. Oh, the original. Sorry, I didn't hear what you say. Did you say read the original, or does the alternative?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge amount of difference. So you can read the alternative.
My source, this is your day. It is a day in which I choose to do nothing by myself, but instead hear your voice in everything I do, only asking for what you offer me, accepting only thoughts you share with me. That's nice.
So it's saying, let this higher awareness guide you, in all your thoughts, your words, your actions. And that's really the outcome. The course has an outcome. I mean, he's saying it's not heaven, because that's beyond the scope of the course. He's saying, I'm going to train you to be in this surrendered state, so that all of your thoughts and your words and your actions, everything comes from thought, ultimately, are inspired. They're inspired by the Holy Spirit. And that's where he leaves us. And he goes, well, if I've done that, then I've done my part. That's the most I can do as a teacher. And the revelation will come in its own time when you're ready. But he leaves us in the charge of the Holy Spirit. The last 5 lessons of the course, he leaves us in the Holy Spirit's care. It says, if you need a thought, then it will come. If you need a word, then it will come. If you need an action. So his outcome for us is to live in this flow state, because that's what it is. Let's just bring it up. There we go. Got too many tabs open here. So 361. So this is where it ends up. Maybe it's a nice way to close the session. So just read this and then we'll end it. So it's the last lesson, and it's repeated 5 times. So saying, okay, this is very important. You didn't repeat it 5 times for no reason. This is where the entire mind training program ends, in this single lesson. This is where he wants. This is the kind of state of mind and state of consciousness he's training us to be in all the time. So you want to read that?
Okay. This holy instant would I give to you. Be you in charge, for I would allow you for I would follow you, certain that your direction gives me peace. To continue. And if I need a word to help me, he will give it to me. If I need a thought, that will he also give. And if I need but stillness and a tranquil, open mind, these are the gifts I will receive of him. He is in charge by my request, and he will hear and answer me, because he speaks for God, my Father, and his Holy Son.
So that's where he leaves us, in the charge of the Holy Spirit, in this flow state, following our bliss, in flow, synchronicity, miracles, all this kind of stuff happening, because our life's been guided by the Holy Spirit. And then he says, well, revelation and escaping the dream, that'll come in its own time when you're ready. God takes the final step. But the scope of the curriculum, this is where it ends. This is what he can train us to do, which is not a bad place to be. That's a happy dream. You're happy, you're in flow, you're peaceful, nothing's really bothering you because you just let go of everything, and you're just listening to the guidance and following it. A very simple state of mind. No complexity enters because you just follow guidance. Like, okay, what should I do now? Oh, okay, there we go. That's what I should. Okay, easy. But you have to drop to get to the state. You have to have dropped your ego mind, because the ego is going to come and interfere with us and say, no, you don't want to be doing that. I'm in charge. This is what you should be doing, and give you alternative directions and instructions. And then you don't know. If you've got these two voices going on, most people only have the ego's voice. The spirit is so suppressed that they don't even hear it. So it's like, to turn that situation around, the spirit is not even being heard, the ego's overwhelmingly loud. Turn it all around and completely deny the ego, so that voice is gone, and now there's only the voice of the spirit, which was so soft you couldn't even hear it, is now the only voice that you hear. I mean, that's quite a process. And that's what this mind training is all about doing. So helping us to do that, to attain this state. His goal is, if I can bring you into this state of mind consistently, then the course has been successful. This is where he leaves us. And he says, at the beginning, that love cannot be taught. Divine love, revelation is beyond the scope of the curriculum, because that will happen when it happens. God takes the final step. In other words, it's out of your control.
Yeah.
But if you live in this flow state, you're more likely to have these kinds of transcendent experiences, and drop into a kind of revelatory, mystic state spontaneously, like Sally did the other day. You said you came back and it just happens. There's no she didn't go, oh, now I think I'm going to go into a mystic state and have 18 hours of bliss. No, it just happens.
Yeah.
And then she comes out of it because life has to go on.
Yeah.
But it's it becomes a powerful reference to, yes, there is a transcendent self, there's a transcendent state, and the more you experience it, you can't deny it anymore. You go, yeah, these models are all correct. What they're pointing to is true. There is a transcendent dimension to life, that all of the developmental psychological models, all of the spiritual teachings point to the same thing. This level of transcendence, whatever you want to call it. So it must be true. They can't all be wrong. And your own experience, if you have your own experience that verifies that, then you go, yeah, I know it's true because we had the experience of it. That's the benefit of the experience of it. It's the difference really between a theologian and a mystic. The theologian might study this and go, okay, well, I understand the model, and yes, I understand mass transcendence, but they haven't experienced it, so it's just kind of intellectual knowledge. The mystic has experienced it, so the mystic knows that it's the case, and the mystic will speak from that experience and be much more powerful as a teacher because of that. Okay, so shall we leave it there?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Jono. That's really good.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining. It's good to have playmates, I guess, in the dream. We have to, doing this on my own. Yeah, monologue's just really hard work. actually. I listened to a guy, the South African teacher, and he did an hour and a half monologue on one of the sections of the course. I was like, hats off to you. But geez, it's hard work.
Yeah.
Just speaking to a camera on your own. It's like
Yeah.
much better if it's a conversation. So
Yeah.
that's what creates the material for everyone to listen to. Now it's posted and everyone can hopefully listen to an engaging conversation.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you very much.
All right. So I'll see you tomorrow.
Lovely. What time tomorrow?
Should we do 12:30 or should we do an evening?
Actually, tomorrow we've got the masterclass.
Tomorrow, we've got the masterclass. So we're going to do the evening. We're going to do an evening session, which will be this session combined with the masterclass. So
that's at 7:00.
Yeah, 7 till about 9ish. You can drop off for the last half an hour. Oh, it'll be interesting for you because you haven't done the course. I'll talk about the course and what's to come. So you haven't done it. I think it'd be useful.
Okay.
So we'll do say an hour and a half of teaching and then half an hour of this is what the course involves, this is what it's about. Maybe I'll ask you, Sally, to share because that's the most powerful way of persuading anyone that this actually is something they want to do. I was just like that was just classic. I was just like
creating quite a bit of conversation here.
Oh, that's so funny. I just laughed. I was like, that's just classic. It was so funny. Anyway, hopefully he'll do it again and have a different experience this time.
Yeah, well, pre-warn me if you want me to say anything. I'm not very good at talking on the hoof.
Well, I'll ask Sally, but
Sally.
Just be genuine. Generally, I don't have to prep anyone because it's like your experience is positive, so you just speak about your experience, and that's fine. But in John's case, I was like, okay, I shouldn't have asked that question.
Well, we thought you handled it very well. You turned it around very well.
Okay, well, whatever, so be it.
Yeah.
That was his experience. But I've had people who go, that was the most profound experience I've ever had.
Yeah.
Of any transformational experience I've ever done. So
it
just depends. It depends on the person and the readiness and the willingness to do it.
Yeah. And
All right.
Okay.
So I'll see you tomorrow at 7. If you have any other friends, there's still room, so plenty of room. So invite them.
Okay.
You've got all the links and stuff, and be a good session. So
yes.
All right. Namaste.
If you've got it there to hand, you can just re-forward it. So I'd have to go through all those telegrams trying to find. Actually, it's all right. I can find it. I've told somebody else I was going to send it to. So, but don't worry, I'll find it. It's not that difficult to find.
Yeah. What would you want the document with the?
Yeah, just the thing I can forward.
Yeah. Okay.
If you've got it to hand.
Well, yeah, it's on my computer. It's not a big deal.
Okay, just put it on Telegram for me.
Yeah, sure.
Lovely.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, John. See you tomorrow.
Okay. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.
All right. So that ends the session for today. Thank you to Jackie and Elaine for joining. I hope you enjoyed that. So do join us for the masterclass, which is happening tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. UK time. That's 9 p.m. South African time. For a couple of hours, we'll do the teaching in the first hour to hour and a half, and then I'll talk about the Art of Letting Go course, which is the first 6 weeks of the one-year program, starting again in February, 5th of February. So do join us then. It's an open invitation to everyone. It's a transformational process I guide you through. So listen, come and listen, and hopefully it'll inspire you to dive into the masterclass, dive into the course, and really do it properly. Okay, so thank you, and namaste. See you tomorrow at 7 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. SA time, right here in the Zoom room.